Is JP Morgan trying to suppress Bitcoin's price? This is one of the loudest rumors going around right now, and today we're digging into what's actually behind it. We'll separate headlines from evidence, and we're going to look at how big institutions can and cannot actually influence markets, and most importantly, whether any of this really matters to Bitcoin's long-term story. I'm RK, your host of the Pioneers of Bitcoin podcast, and let's get into it. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode here at the Pioneers of Bitcoin podcast. Today is November 26th, 2025, and the Bitcoin price right now is at 87,100. And since there's been a lot of rumors going around about JP Morgan, I thought it would be a great idea to dive into this topic today. And before I do so, I would like to just analyze the current sentiment, overall sentiment, and then we're going to go step by step through what's happening in the market. So this is something I actually wanted to show you guys last time in our previous episode. And I thought maybe let's dive into this a little bit more before we talk about the JP Morgan stuff going on. So here, as you can see, this is the chart where you can see the total balance sheet asset of, or assets on the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. And the spike that you see here in 2020 was basically responsible for all the money printing we saw and all the price action we saw afterwards. And it's, as you can see, it was exactly in March of 2020. And as you can see here, if you zoom a little bit in, after this spike, we had a continuous spike even afterwards, and it continued to go up and up. And then we had the backlash of high inflation, and the Fed basically stopped the money printing or the expansion of its balance sheet. And then we had the rate hikes, which was basically the biggest rate hikes in history. And ever since that time, the balance sheet has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So they're trying to suck money out of the system after pumping it up. And this is what I meant, guys, last time in the previous episode when I said it's actually surprising that Bitcoin has done what it has done during this period. I mean, we know what it did during this period because the price went from $6,000 to over $70,000 or almost $70,000. But after this happened, we saw the Bitcoin bear market, but we recovered from that bear market and we've been actually in a bull market for the reasons I mentioned in my last podcast episode that you should definitely listen to. So they have erased pretty much. So what do we have here? We have almost 9 trillion at the peak of the balance sheet, which was in May 2022. And ever since then, we went from 9 trillion almost to 6.5. That is a reduction of more than $2.5 trillion that they have erased during this period, which is pretty crazy. And that is why you see the sentiment being so low. Liquidity is low. The markets are stagnant. Nobody wants to sell their house because the interest rates are very, very high. And everybody is waiting for the money printer to come back. And we're seeing lots of signs that the weakness is continuing. This is another chart that I wanted to show you, which shows the sentiment in the Bitcoin market, which is, in my opinion, the only market we have left which is completely free of manipulation and we can actually somehow rely on. And as you can see here, this was the extreme fear we saw after the collapse of FTX, which was the sentiment was at 12 with a Bitcoin price of 21,000. And now, I mean, we're a little bit back now. We are now at 20, which is still in extreme fear territory. But we went to a single figure, which is unprecedented. So we've never seen Bitcoin being in such extreme fear sentiment in history. We've never had this digit in market sentiment, which is really, really interesting. We're now back a little bit. We're above that territory. We're at 20 now, but it's still very, very low, which is, in my opinion, one of the best times to actually buy Bitcoin. Not financial advice, but that's my personal opinion. So that was something I wanted to mention because I did not talk about this in my previous episode. And let's actually dive into what actually is going around right now in the market and why we have still a lot of negative sentiment besides the liquidity issue that we have. So as you can see here, we have the top treasury companies worldwide who are buying Bitcoin and putting it on their balance sheet. And as you can see, MicroStrategy is by far the biggest one. They hold over 640,000, almost 650,000 Bitcoin, which is absolutely crazy if you think about it, how much this is. And obviously, when Bitcoin goes up, that's very good for the company. But when Bitcoin goes down, that is consequently a disaster for the company. We've seen the price action dump and dump and dump over the past few weeks, especially with the drawdown from 125,000 down to 82,000. MicroStrategy has absolutely plummeted, and it doesn't look very good for the share price. I mean, if you look at just October until now, we had a drawdown of over 50%. And if you look at the price action since July, which was, pretty much the peak of this year, I believe. Oh, it was a little bit higher at the beginning of the year. No, actually, that was previous year. It's November of 24. So the peak of this year was around $460. And now we are at 170, which is a drawdown of over 60%, which is really, really crazy, the drawdown. So because they have a levered position on Bitcoin, obviously the price action of the stock is very volatile, and it actually goes exponentially more down than Bitcoin because they hold so much Bitcoin on their balance sheet. But let's actually dive into this matter and ask ourselves what's happening and why this could be happening. So there's a lot of rumors that JP Morgan is behind this dump of MSTR. And MSTR is the ticker of MicroStrategy, just for context. And MicroStrategy's name has been changed to Strategy. So when I say MSTR, I'm talking about the share of Strategy. So MSTR, this tweet is summarizing it very well. What they have done at JP Morgan is JP Morgan says MicroStrategy at risk of exclusion from major equity indices as the January MSCI decision approaches. Okay, so in January, the MSCI, which is basically one of the biggest, actually I think the biggest index of worldwide stocks, that is basically the savings account of pretty much every fund that you can think of, is considering to exclude MSTR from their index, which would basically boycott the company from capital inflows. And MicroStrategy or Strategy, they have a very simple strategy. Every time their stock goes up, they take the money and they buy more Bitcoin. And they have innovative ways to actually sell more stock. And they have basically made Bitcoin as their reserve asset to issue more credit and buy more of it. That's basically the strategy that they have. They also have a software business, but the main business has become this engineering of financial instruments to increase their Bitcoin per share that they issue. And they're obviously under a lot of pressure when the price goes down. And this decision is in January. But actually, what makes this JP Morgan announcement very, very confusing is that this comment from MSCI that they would or that they are considering to exclude digital assets or digital asset companies or companies like Strategy from their index is from October 10th. So this is nothing new. It came out actually quite a while ago that they are considering to do that. But now, after many, many weeks, and after we've seen a price action that looks very, very bad for MSTR, we see headlines of JP Morgan where they dig this negative news out of the ground and they try to push the price lower. And there is rumors that they have a very large short position on this stock and they want to profit from it. And let me just play this clip for you. And this guy is summarizing this pretty well.
All right, so over the last few days, I've posted a few videos on the various aspects of this assault on MSTR and the assault on their underlying asset, Bitcoin, by JP Morgan. So let's talk about the various aspects of that. First, they get short the stock, right? We know that happened because they didn't have the stock to deliver out to customers. So they're short the stock, they're motivated to have it go down, right? Second leg of that stool is now they increase the margin requirement from 50% to 95%, okay? And there's no risk model where that makes sense. The underlying asset is stable. They have no risks of default on their debt. They have minor leverage, right? So they don't need to sell Bitcoin, right? So then that third leg of the stool yesterday, they put a note out, basically a short note on the stock, a stock they don't even cover, basically saying it's going to be removed from the MSCI index and the NASDAQ 100 index, right? Basically kicking the baby when it's down. So all motivated, coordinated attacks, sequential attacks, right? Makes perfect sense. It feels to me like their business, they think their business is threatened by MSTR, their business is threatened by the DeFi network, right? By the Bitcoin network. And you want to break the confidence in the asset. That's how you would do it.
Okay, so let's actually unpack this. I know this sounds plausible, and believe me, I'm not a fan of these bankers. I actually don't like them at all. I think they're the biggest enemy of anybody because after what happened in 2008, we have black on white what these bankers have done, and they actually all belong to jail. That's my personal opinion. But let's actually look at the facts. This bank, JP Morgan, is the largest bank in the world, period. They couldn't actually care less, like they actually couldn't care about anything about Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin could go to 1 million and it would actually not change much about their business model. They're so big that actually paying so much attention to such a little asset like Bitcoin does not make any sense. It actually does not. But Bitcoiners, and unfortunately in this bubble on Bitcoin Twitter, love to, actually this is human nature, by the way. So the moment a group of people feel threatened, you always try to create a story and defend that story, and everything starts to make sense because you have a coordinated attack on Bitcoin. That's the statement, right? But if you look at the facts, there's actually, yes, they have done what this guy said. They have changed the margin requirements for this stock, but that doesn't mean anything. The stock is very, very volatile. So you can actually change margin requirements for a stock that is highly volatile. That is absolutely normal. That is completely normal. This is common practice. It doesn't say anything. Second of all, I think the market is using this opportunity to actually boycott this bank, and they deserve it, to be honest with you. But we have to stay factual, right? Because this bank is like any other financial bank, in my opinion. They're criminals, right? What they have done in the past 10 or 15 years is incredible. So this guy is summarizing it quite well. So JP Morgan, listen to this. Call to action: boycott JP Morgan Chase Jeffrey Epstein's banker. A new U.S. Senate Finance Committee memo reveals JP Morgan massively underreported Jeffrey Epstein's suspicious transactions for nearly 2 decades. From 2002 to 2016, JP Morgan filed SARs on only $4.3 million in Epstein-linked transactions. Then, after Epstein's 2019 arrest and death, the bank suddenly filed SARs covering over $1.3 billion in Epstein-related wires, withdrawals, and transfers. The memo shows JP Morgan's internal compliance flagged red flags for years. Senior executives were repeatedly alerted. The bank kept Epstein as a client anyway. They're since paid $290 million to Epstein's victims. These are not rumors. These are not conspiracy theories. These are government documented facts, bank filings, and court records. And we're supposed to believe this institution is a paragon of market integrity when it comes to MSTR. The one company structurally threatening the credit debt system JP Morgan profits from? Give me a break. This is the old financial regime protecting itself, not you. Move your money to platforms that don't ignore red flags for 20 years. Full boycott of JP Morgan. Absolutely right. 100% agreed. Very well done. And I support this message. 100%. However, there is no evidence that JP Morgan is manipulating the price of the shares of MSTR. There is no evidence of that. And let's not, fabricate some stories and make the industry look bad to the outside, because there's absolutely no evidence that this can actually be true. But this guy is actually putting some facts on the table, which I find more interesting, because he's saying that these guys have been pretty much banking pedophile. That's what Epstein was, right? And I support this message. This is absolutely right. And let's not forget one thing. The same bank that everybody is saying is shorting MSTR, just a few weeks ago, they projected the Bitcoin price to reach $170,000 within the next 6 to 12 months. So something is not adding up here, okay? Like, one thing we know, these banks, they try all forms of tactics to manipulate markets. That we know. But we have to also understand that if we try to think about stories that we don't have really black on white evidence for, it will actually not achieve the result that we are looking for, right? We want people to understand Bitcoin. We want people to adopt Bitcoin as a currency, as a store of value, but we don't want to actually have enemies in order to achieve that goal. Okay, so I find it a little bit destructive to think of stories that are not factually backed. Okay, so long story short, this does not add up. Why would this bank just project a few weeks ago that Bitcoin is going to go up to 170,000, and just a few weeks later they're shorting MSTR, which doesn't add up at all? But let's actually look at some older videos of JP Morgan. This is JP Morgan, not JP Morgan, but JP Morgan's CEO, Jamie Dimon. So this guy has been very loud about Bitcoin, and he's been very wrong about Bitcoin. And after I show you the sequence of these videos, you will know yourself that it actually doesn't matter what this bank is saying about Bitcoin, what this CEO thinks about Bitcoin, because of Bitcoin's nature of being a decentralized form of money that nobody can stop, okay? So this video was, I think, from a few years ago. I think it was last year at Davos, and he was asked about Bitcoin and what he thinks about it. And this was right after we got the Bitcoin ETF approvals. Just take a listen to this.
Cryptocurrencies, there are two types. There's a cryptocurrency which might actually do something. Think of a cryptocurrency as an embedded smart contract in it, and then we can use it to buy and sell real estate and move data. That may have value.
The idea of tokenizing.
Tokenizing things that you do something with. And then there's one which does nothing. I call it the pet rock, the Bitcoin or something like that. And so on the Bitcoin, there's, first of all, and I'm not trying to make a joke here. There are use cases, AML, fraud, anti-money laundering, tax avoidance, sex trafficking. Those are real use cases, and you see it being used for...
Says the guy who banked Epstein. Unbelievable.
Hundreds, maybe 50, $100 billion a year for that. That is the end use case. Everything else is people train among themselves. So
speculate.
Yeah. Now, okay. Now, my last statement, the last time I ever talk about Bitcoin is I defend your right to do Bitcoin. I think, it's okay. I don't want to tell you what to do. So my personal advice would be don't get involved. But I don't want to tell any one of you what to do. It's a free country.
What do you make of BlackRock? What do you make of the other firms, the BlackRocks of the world that obviously, and Larry Fink changed his view of this, obviously.
Yeah.
And maybe he changed his view because you think he genuinely believes in Bitcoin or believed it because he thinks that there's a marketplace for it and he wants to be part of that market. But what do you think of there's about a dozen big financial companies, Fidelity included.
Number one, I don't care. So just please stop talking about this shit. And I don't know what he would say about blockchain versus currencies that do something.
Okay, enough of that nonsense. So this guy has a track record of being wrong again and again and again about Bitcoin. And you can see it. He has put all the evidence on the internet, and the internet never forgets. There's one more clip that actually shows him, sorry, no, not this one. This is something that was published about JP Morgan also a few years ago.
On September 12th.
Where it's actually, I'm not really sure if this is true or not, but if this is something that happened, we know that you cannot rely on anything that this bank is saying or this CEO is saying. So take a look at this video as well.
On September 12th, Jamie Dimon says Bitcoin is a fraud. He says he'll fire any one of his traders buying Bitcoin. Bitcoin drops 24%. When Jamie Dimon speaks, people listen. So that weekend, we found out that the largest buyer of a Bitcoin fund that's in Europe that buys physical Bitcoin, right? The largest buyer was Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan. And that's not illegal. He says it's a fraud. He says he'll fire anyone that buys it. Yes.
And at the same time, his company is buying it.
His company is buying it.
It's just, so unethical.
Yeah. And yeah, enough of that nonsense. It's just proving that my point of actually it does not matter what these bankers say. It does not matter what they think about Bitcoin. At the end of the day, what matters is adoption. And we have seen more and more and more adoption over time in Bitcoin. And that's all that matters, guys. So if this banker wants to buy your Bitcoin, obviously he's going to try his best to manipulate to make you sell your Bitcoin in order to suppress the price so they can buy it. But we have to stay factual. And all I'm trying to do in this episode, to be honest with you, is to put all the facts on the table. I'm not saying this guy is legit. You can see with proof that this guy is not legit. He's been wrong about Bitcoin over the past 10 or 15 years. He's been absolutely wrong. Here's another video I will play for you in a second. But it actually doesn't matter what they say. If they say Bitcoin is going to go to 170,000, it doesn't matter. If they say Bitcoin or MicroStrategy is going to get excluded and it's going to put pressure on the price, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Bitcoin doesn't care. That's what I believe is true, and that's what I believe matters. It does not matter. So here's another clip of him. Here's another clip of him from 2015. Think of it. 2015, the price of Bitcoin was at $400. Take a listen.
And you're wasting your time.
So you think they can
when the DOJ calls someone up and says that's an illegal currency and it's against the laws of the United States of land, if you do it again, we'll put you in jail, it's over.
So you really
There's no issue. There will be, and this is my personal opinion, there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world. There's no government that's going to put up with it for long. It's kind of cute now. You know, a lot of the senators in Congress will say, I support Silicon Valley innovation. There will be no currency that gets around government control. And you're wasting your time.
So you think they can
when the deal.
Okay. Yeah, guys, that's the story of the day. A lot of nonsense going around. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. Do the work. Follow us on Twitter, but also subscribe to this channel, guys. If you have questions, put your comments in the comment section below, and we will answer every single question as we will every day. And stay tuned, and thank you for watching. See you in the next video.
Rumors.